So we want to thank y'all for coming to the last lecture of the Heritage Lecture Series here at Sonoma State University by the Center for Culture, Gender, and Sexuality. Before we begin, we'd like to take this time to thank our sponsors, the instructionally related activities, MEChA de Sonoma, the Sonoma Student Union, Associated Students Production, and the Sigma Pi Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Now, without further ado, I'm going to read a little bit about Mr. Victor Villasenor, who's our honored guest here tonight. Author Victor Villasenor speaks as vividly as he writes. In his candid and heartfelt manner, Villasenor will passionately and openly talk about his own life obstacles as he addresses the difficulties of growing up feeling lost between two worlds, in a constant struggle to find common ground between the culture of his Mexican, Indian, European ancestors and his family's newly adopted American homeland, all the while coping with an undiagnosed learning disability. With first-hand knowledge of the effects of discrimination and racial separation in society, Villasenor's motto has become, "We are all one race, the human race." Believing this creed is essential to community and global harmony, his writings and speeches resonate with it.
Villasenor's body of works included a number of non-fiction books which are all used in schools throughout the country. The trilogy Wild Steps of Heaven, Rain of Gold, and 13 Senses. Jury, The People versus Juan Corona, Macho, and Walking Stars. A collection of short stories written especially to inspire young people. Muro Genius, the first book of the second trilogy, released July 2004, is a national bestseller and a Pulitzer Prize finalist. Victor also wrote the screenplay for The Ballad of Gregorio Cortes, starring Eduardo James Olmos. Villasenor's acclaimed written books, as well as inspiring lectures, have earned him numerous awards and endorsements, including the founding John Steinbeck Chair appointment.
Born in the barrio of Carlsbad, California in 1940, Victor Villasenor was raised in a rancho 4 miles north in Oceanside. Since his parents were born in Mexico, Villasenor spoke only Spanish until beginning of school. After years of facing language and cultural barriers, heavy discrimination, and a reading problem, later diagnosed as dyslexia, Victor dropped out of high school his junior year and moved to Mexico. There he discovered a wealth of Mexican art, literature, music that helped him recapture and understand the dignity and richness of his heritage. Please join us and welcome to el señor Victor Villasenor.
Can you hear me? Does this thing work from there? No kidding. All right, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. And if it's possible, can I get you three to move over here into the middle so I can make eye contact with you? I can make eye contact like that and like that. I'll lose you a little bit, but if you could move over to the second row so you're over here more. Because it's sort of like a V, yeah. You're fine. You two are fine there. I got you. Okay. Now, how many of you here speak Spanish? Raise your hand. Okay, un chingo. I mean, bastante. Okay. Now, how many of you here speak English? Raise your hands. Raise them high. Hi. You only speak a little bit of English? Oh, okay. Okay. Now, who here speaks a third language that's not European based, meaning an African language, an Asian language, an indigenous language, a language that's not European based? Raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, watch this. The future of the world is pretty obvious. The future of the world is 3 languages. One language, a person can only have one perspective. 2 languages, you don't learn new words. You actually start accessing different parts of the brain. With brain scans, they know this now. And a 3rd language causes a flexibility to reach these different parts of the brain. The brain is not being used. They say we use 10% of the brain. We don't even know how to talk about the brain because we use the word "the" in front, and that destroys brain. It's not the brain. It's brain. And that means it's also collective consciousness between all of humanity. Now, how many of you here know, well here, let's back up. How many of you here are geniuses that haven't heard me, just wait, how many people here have never heard me speak? Okay. How many of you here have heard me speak? Okay, well then you guys are out. You can't vote. The rest of you are virgins. I was telling him something very funny that happened about a month ago. I'm talking and this big young man walks in late. And I say, have you heard me speak? And he said, no. I said, then you're a virgin. You come up here and sit up here. These are the virgins up here. And afterwards, we're signing books. He says, how did you know? Anyway, okay. You that haven't heard me speak are virgins. Okay. Now, among you people that have never heard me speak, how many of you are geniuses? Raise your hands. 1, 2, 3. Now you guys heard me speak. Put your hand down. That have not heard me speak, how many of you are geniuses? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now you're scratching your ear. Does that mean you're a genius? Or? Okay. 7, 8. Okay. Watch this. My wife, Juanita, she's a kindergarten teacher. And I asked kindergarten kids across the nation, how many of you are geniuses? They all raised their hand. One little kid in Texas dropped on the floor, raised up both arms and both legs. And I went over there and I said, you're a real genius. He said, yeah, I'm really good. I said, how come you know you're so good? He said, look at my finger painting. I looked at it, I said, that's really good. He said, yeah, I'm a genius. Now adults say, that kid doesn't know what genius means. That kid knows, adults don't know. Who here has ever looked up the word genius in a dictionary? 1 person. 2 people. She looked it up halfway. She only raised her hand a little ways. Raise your hand higher. Okay. A good answer would be, when somebody asks if you're a genius, to say, I don't know. What's the definition? Genius, according to the Webster Dictionary, which is quoted here in my book, Burro Genius, I use the old Webster, published 1957 and earlier. They started changing in the 80s. Now the definition of genius has nothing to do with genius. They start saying high IQ. The word genius originally meant guardian deity, spirit of a person, spirit, natural ability. According to ancient Roman belief, a guardian spirit assigned at birth. That meant que mi abuelita, my grandmother, when she told me that I was born with a guardian angel, and whenever I felt confused or lost, all I have to do is put my hands over my heart, and my guardian angel would speak to me, and I'd feel better. And every night when I went to sleep, my guardian angel would take me up to heaven to sleep with Papito Dios, little daddy God, who back then I thought, was a short Mexican that ate rice and beans and drank tequila and laughed a lot. I didn't know he was tall and skinny and mean till I got nunnerized by the nuns. She would tell me I'd go up to heaven and speak with him and come back in the morning feeling much better. Emerson writes, Emerson says, what lies before us and what lies behind us are small matters compared to what lies within us. When we bring what's within out into the world, miracles happen. And Jesus Christ said, the kingdom of God is within us all. I don't care if you're a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, an atheist. In fact, if you're an atheist, it's probably easier because you're carrying less baggage. Those are small potatoes. The big potatoes that within us, we have something fantastic, the kingdom of God. And we bring it out, miracles can happen. When we listen to that inner guide. So I want everybody right now to say, I am a genius. I am. I am. Wonderful. I am a genius. I am great, fantastic. I can make a difference. I can kick ass. What we have just done is we've taken us out of the head and accessed our 3 other computers. See, we don't have 5 senses, we have 13, according to the people from Oaxaca. We've been driving around with 2 cylinders, and we're an 8-cylinder big V8 motor. 5 senses is what's the reason we have wars and problems on earth is because of 5 senses and the words the, or, and but. It's language and concepts that are keeping us in a prison and separated. In Oaxaca, where 13 senses used to be recognized, the key sense is the 6th sense balance. I was a wrestler. You get into your wrestling position. Any wrestlers here? Any wrestlers? Not one wrestler or one? Okay. Okay. I was a wrestler, and you get into your balancing position, and you get down, and you're ready. The other person can outweigh you by 50 pounds, 75 pounds. They're off balance by trying to use their muscle on you. You flip them on their butt, and you pin them in a second. Balance is the key to health, to happiness, to everything, to life. Do we teach balance? No. In Oaxaca, where balance was the key, you didn't have the word or. There was only and. So I'm a liberal and I'm conservative to be in balance. All good things come from liberals, from liberation. And yet if you liberate everything, you lose your balance. So I'm a conservative liberal. You take any issue, abortion, that people get so upset about. With and, I'm against abortion for all these reasons, and I'm for it in circumstances. And causes a continuum. It takes the polarity of the mind out. It starts dissolving opinions and starts rising up understanding, and then the possibility is wisdom. And now that you have that, you can listen to your intuition. You can listen to that inner guide. Who's more intuitive, men or women? Who? Women. Who? Women. And you men who don't agree with that aren't going to get any. So I want to hear from the men real loud. Who's more intuitive, men or women? Women. Hey, you wimpy men, come on. You wimps. Now I want it loud, men and women together. Who's more intuitive, men or women? Women. Now we can start going places. Who here can conceive of the possibility of world harmony with all the problems going on, can conceive the possibility of world harmony and peace for 5,000 years? Who can conceive that? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. Do I have 12? 12. Okay. Do I have 13? 13. 14. 15. Now watch this. We're going to vote at the end in an hour and 15 minutes. And I guarantee you 95% will change your position permanently. It's all to do with language. And it's with moving, instead of trying to find the answers outside, we start finding the answers inside. Religion and politics are never going to bring us world harmony and peace. It's people accessing the kingdom of God and bringing it out and becoming so powerful that we get a better grade of leaders all over the world. And those leaders are going to be a lot of women and men who aren't afraid of women and people who have compassion and heart. Now, before we get into miracles, who here has read Rain of Gold? Okay, about a fourth. Who here has read Burro Genius? Okay, a few more. Who here has read 13 Senses? Just a few. Who here has read Wild Steps of Heaven? Who's read Walking Stars? Okay. Walking Stars, the toughest book of all. Now, I'm going to tell you about 3 words. Who here knows that the word "the" is only European based? Who knows that? Come on. Not one person. Okay. One person. Okay, thank you. "The" was invented by the Jews. And I'm not bad-mouthing the Jews. My wife, her mother's Peruvian, her father's German Jew. My kids are Jewish. I've become Jewish because I've eaten a lot of bagels, so through digestion. Now, the Jews invented "the" so they could become the chosen people. Then the Greeks liked it, and they adopted it, and it went all over Europe. The rest of the world has that tree and this tree. Europe has the tree. They don't stop there. They jump from the tree to the truth. And in Europe, truth becomes absolute. The rest of the world has your truth of what you know, what you've heard, your age, your thinking. Your truth over here. Then we talk about it, and truth is an agreement that we come upon. Does it still work? It doesn't work now? Can you still hear me back there? You can? Okay. So then, the rest of the world, it's an agreement. Not in Europe. In Europe-based mentality, truth is absolute. So what happens? Somebody else talks about their religion, their truth, their political truth, their culture. We don't listen because we got that truth. We can't listen. We have a language that has funneled us to the truth, the everything. The is the destruction of our world. And English only is the end of this nation. This nation is destined to fall apart, be isolated, be hated everywhere because of the, or, and but. Let me show you the power of the. You've all heard of the indigenous Indians of America here, that they came across the Bering Straits, the migration 20,000 years ago. Who's all heard that? Raise your hands. Everybody's heard about it. Everybody. Raise your hands high. Don't be lazy. Okay, now, take the migration, change the to a migration. It opens up the whole ballpark. Suddenly, you realize why there were a bunch of blue-eyed people in the Caribbean from the Vikings. You realize why there were a bunch of people with kinky hair in South America from Africa coming over there. You find out that the big donut-shaped things from China, those boats, those yaks or whatever they call them, they found them in the shallow waters of Peru. You start understanding that the language of the Japanese, the Mississippi Indians, and the Hungarians are almost identical. That when I talked at Wellesley in back east, I said that, and this woman that is from Hungary, and she said, yeah, when I'm walking the streets, I'll hear people talking Hungarian behind me, and I understand it. Turn around, they're Japanese. You'll find out that there's a tribe in the middle of Africa, that their whole talk about the star behind this other stars that we just found out about in the last 3 years, they've known about for thousands of years, and they say they came from there, and they give this whole mythology, the same as some Canadian Indians. People have been migrating all over the planet Earth for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. And yet, because of we isolate things. The migration, that's a bunch of bullshit. And the puts us into a box. That's a technical word in English. That puts us in a box where we can't get out of. In a prison. Then how do we stay in that box intellectually and everything else? We use the word or. Either for me or against me. This is the truth or not. Watch politicians, watch political leaders. They're full of the and or. It's a manipulation to force us to agree with them or we're out. And then how do you stay in that prison? Use but. She says this to me and I listen to her and I listen to her and I said, oh yeah, I heard you, but. I just erased everything she said. The, or, and but are words of manipulation developed very highly skilled out of Europe to keep us in a prison and arrogant. Then in English, what do? To even make it bigger, what we do is we capitalize I. In Spanish you don't, unless you drive a Toyota pickup, then you got yo in the back, you cross out the others. Otherwise, in English, you got I, big I, have the truth, and I have become an arrogant, ignorant human being. English only is destined, without a doubt, to destroy us. Now, how many people here are feeling a little uncomfortable, don't like what I'm saying? Come on, raise your hands. I'd like some honesty. Who's feeling uncomfortable? About 15 to 20% of you are. Okay, how many of you are 20% uncomfortable? Thank you. You're 20% uncomfortable. Okay. Anybody else? How about 10%? 10% uncomfortable? 50%? 100%? Come on. Anyway. 100%? No, uncomfortable with what I'm saying because of what I'm saying. You're uncomfortable for what reason? Because you know it's true. Okay. Let me tell you, when I gave this talk to a bunch of retired nuns and priests, and I got to the end of my talk, they were so silent. I said, "Oh shit." Well, I mean, I didn't say it out loud. I said, "Oh boy," and I said, what do you think?" And nobody said a word. And then I said, okay, excuse me, how do you feel? This nun jumped out of her chair, curly gray hair, dressed in street clothes, and she screamed, "I feel free for the first time in all my life." And this other nun said, "I know God for the first time." And this other nun said, "I can't talk." And she's just crying and crying. And the priest said, "You got to take this to the Pope." And then the nun said, "He's a man, he'll never understand." And then the beautiful thing about it is they forgot about me. I mattered no more. And they started talking about the classes they were teaching, all this stuff, and they forgot all about me. And I sat down and just listened to these nuns and priests. It was fantastic. It's so liberating where we're going to go. Anyway, so destructive words are the, or, and but. And the thing that's really awful is we have 5 senses developed by the Greeks, solidified by Aristotle. So we're educated to just 4 senses: hearing, sight, smell, taste. If men go into their feelings, they're wimps. If women go into their feelings, they're being too emotional. So we don't go there. We're only using a couple of our cylinders. We have 13 senses. In Oaxaca, I already said, where balance is the key, you go into your feelings totally. I hate my wife. I'm pissed off at her. I don't know what to do. I want to, strangle her to death. On the other hand, I love her and I think she's beautiful and I want to make up and go to bed. And causes a continuum. And is so powerful that when I gave this talk 14 years ago in Portland, Oregon, to a bunch of attorneys, one gray-haired attorney came up to me afterwards with curly hair, and he said to me, "I'm an international attorney. I speak 8 languages, and I just settled a dispute between the Turks and the Greeks where they've been killing each other for nearly 3,000 years over sewerage and water. And I settled it in 3 months by taking each side for 1 month and teaching them how to talk and how to think without the, or, and but. Then I brought them to the table. We settled it in 3 weeks. The future of the world is to understand that language itself is what's separated. It's not the religion. It's not the politics. It's language itself. that was developed by men to crush women, to crush the spirit, and to keep us locked in our heads. Because then you can get young men to go fight wars, you can get people to run companies for the bottom line and not care about humanity and not have compassion. Is this making a little bit of sense? Raise your hands. Okay, now watch this. Excuse me? Were you there? No, women had a whole different language. They had to do with giving birth. And that means that they're in a thing of pain and love. Men don't go through that. Excuse me. This is a male-based language that we're dealing with. And it's been going on for about 6,000 years. 8,000. Now, watch this. It's okay. You can have that puzzled look. It's okay. Now watch. This is a picture of my grandmother. This is a picture of my grandmother. And I'll tell you where the switch happened. God used to be female almost everywhere. In our Mexican culture and the Indians, it's still a female. That's why people, even though they're Catholics, pray to the Virgin Mary. They don't pray to God and to Jesus. Once God became a male, everything became male-based language and everything. Anyhow, this is a picture of my grandmother. Now I'm going to tell you a story about her. Back in 1862, my great-grandfather, Leonardo Camargo, was drunk on the beach in Aztlán, Mexico. The authorities came and hit him on the head and told him he had to go join the Mexican army and fight the Yaqui Indian Wars. Because the Yaquis are savages, cannibals. And they're not good Christians. They're not Christians at all. So he's got to go fight them. He said, I don't have any time to go fight them. You know, I'm married to my wife, Rosa. We got 2 kids. I got to go home and take care of my milpita, my little cornfield. And he said, you're a good Christian, aren't you? Well, yeah. Well, then you got to help us or they're going to terrorize your own family. So he went and fought the Yaquis. For 2 years he fought the Yaquis, and the Yaquis kicked their butts. Yaquis are tall. They were about 6'2" average. The women were about 5'8", 4'9", taller than all the people who are coming out of Europe. And Yaquis have long legs and well-developed asses. Different than the Apache. The Apache has no ass. And the Apache has a huge chest and huge barrel arms, where the Yaqui has a narrow chest and wide shoulders. They fought the Yaquis for 2 years, couldn't beat them. So what did they start doing as good Christians? They started going into the villages and burning them and shooting the women and children. The same thing happened here all over the United States. Yuba City, just north of Sacramento, they slaughtered all its camps of indigenous people and then said there are no Indians there during the gold rush time. All over it happened. And they went in there and they started slaughtering the women and children. This morning, my great-grandfather's shooting women and children. And this little girl runs out of a hut with her hair on fire. She's this big. And he goes to shoot her because she's an Indian savage cannibal. And just as he goes to shoot her, the sunlight comes up and illuminates her. And he sees a miracle. And what is a miracle? It's when you don't see what you've been trained to see. You see with the purity, with the simplicity of God's eyes. And with that simplicity, he said, it's just a little girl with her hair on fire, screaming for help. So he lowered his rifle. A fellow soldier went to shoot her. He turned and shot his fellow soldier, a friend of his. He didn't mean to. Then he grabs the little girl, wraps her in a blanket, smothers her fire out of her hair, jumps on a horse, keeps stealing horses, runs home for 3 days and nights, and tells his wife, Rosa, we're going to have to leave the coast of Sinaloa and move up into La Barranca de Cobre in Chihuahua and live in hiding the rest of our lives because the authorities, if they find me, they're going to execute me. Who here has ever been to La Barranca de Cobre? 2 people. 3 people, 4 people, okay. La Barranca de Cobre is still so isolated. I was up there last year. That's where my mother's from. And we found a woodpecker that hadn't been recorded. Indians still live in caves. It is 10 times larger than the Grand Canyon. But instead of being 1 canyon, it's 8 canyons. It's millions and millions of land that hasn't been touched. Anyway, they went up there and they're living in hiding. And Rosa started hating this Indian child that caused her to leave her family and her brothers and sisters and parents. But then an angel of God appeared on a rock one morning and said, Rosa, it's not your husband who saved this child. It's this child who saved your husband from immortal damnation because he'd been killing women and children for 2 years. She saw the light, started loving that Indian child, named her Guadalupe, raised her as her own daughter, and that Indian child with her hair on fire became my grandmother. This is my grandmother, that Indian child with her hair on fire. And my grandmother raised me in the old Yaqui Indian way. She told me that I was a walking star, a 5-pointed walking star, 1 head, 2 arms, 2 legs, and that I came across the universe gathering stardust with a guardian angel on my side, and we came down to earth to plant the seeds of the stardust that we came, and that every generation is sent to plant stardust here on earth. And then after we live our lives and plant our stardust here on earth, we return to the heavens, regresamos al cielo, sprinkling stardust back on all over the universe where we came from. Every generation does that. I'm planting my seeds, you're going to plant your seeds, and on and on and on. It's ongoing, it never stops. My father also explained to me why the Jews lost the Garden of Eden. He said, it's very simple, mijo. They lost it because they had no tequila. He said, if the Jews had had herradura tequila, Adam would have had 2, 3 good shots. Then God would have come down and said, who did it? Adam wouldn't have blamed his wife. He wouldn't have chickened out. He would have said, yo y qué? And then God would have said, oh, you feeling frisky? You're damn right I'm feeling frisky. What are you drinking? Herradura tequila de los Altos de Jalisco. God said, you know, I've never had a shot of that. Let me get a shot. And we'd still be in the Garden of Eden drinking tequila with God. The only reason the Jews chickened out, Adam chickened out, and we lost the garden, you're right, that kid's right, lost the garden, is because there was no tequila. My father was a bootlegger. Anyway, so my grandmother taught me how to plant, how to be a farmer. That's why the Yaquis were hunted. And they're the last Indians in Mexico that had a bounty on their heads. The Yaquis were good farmers and they controlled some of the valleys. They weren't cannibals. They were mostly vegetarians. But the government can't say, oh, these are good people, good farmers. Let's take their lands away from them. So they lied. They started propaganda that still goes on. My grandmother taught me how to plant corn, maíz, calabaza, squash, ejote, string beans, chayote. Well, it's a type of squash. And she taught me how to plant these things and how to water it. Who here has ever planted a garden? Raise your hands. Raise them high. That's very good. Who here has ever watered a garden? All kids need to be taught before they go to school how to plant corn. It's so important. I was a little kid. My grandmother would have me plant every year, and nothing would happen. We'd water nothing. Then a little green bump would come out. Then a little bit we watered, and all of a sudden it's this big. And all of a sudden it's bigger than me, and I'd walk around naked and rub my butt in the sandy soil, and it felt so good. I want you to know that planting a garden shows kids the miracle of life. So anyway, she told me I was a walking star, and I'd been sent here by the Holy Creator to plant the stardust that had brought from me with heaven. And I felt wonderful and important. And then she also would tell me that every night when the moon came out, that was the left eye of God. And when the sun came up, that was the right eye of God. And we're always connected with God. And then she told me that I was wonderful, and I was great, and I was stardust, and I felt good and wonderful. Then she'd take me around the block in a little wagon, and she raised me with stories. My grandmother told me stories about my mother. Here's my mother. My mother is so beautiful that when she was 40 years old, people would ask her for her autograph, assuming that she was a movie star. She told me that my mother had a pet deer in La Barranca de Cobre, and she chased it up and down Las Barrancas. La Barranca de Cobre is so high and so low that there's pines and snow at the top level, and down at the bottom of the same canyon, you'll come into tropics and jungle and bananas. Anyway, so she chased her deer up and down the mountains, and my grandmother told me that that's how she learned how to be agile and have strong legs and dodge and run. And then they told me that when the rainy season would come, the jungle would flourish, and the parrots would come in and hatch their young, and the flowers would blossom everywhere and fill the canyon with fragrance from heaven. And then she told me that when the butterflies would come, they'd come in by the hundreds of thousands, and they just fill the canyon with a tapestry of color and dancing color. Then when the bullhorn went off, that meant it was time to go to work at the American-owned gold mining town out of St. Louis and San Francisco. My sons and I hiked in, and we found records in a pig pen that showed that they were taking out 4,700 ounces of gold per week. And my grandmother told me that my mother and her, when the earth started trembling, that meant the soldiers were coming. So my mother was 7 years old. This book starts when my mother's 7. I'd have to grab her sisters that are 12 and 14 and 16, hide them under the chicken manure so they wouldn't be stolen and raped. And the soldiers would come in on horseback, and they'd find all the girls they could and rape them, and they'd find all the young boys and either put them in the army or execute them for helping the other side, and they'd burn the village. And my mother was born in 1911, and the revolution started in 1910. So all my mother knew was rape and burning and all this stuff. And my mother and my grandmother still never fell apart. After a day of rape and plunder and everything, they'd kneel down and they'd thank God that they had survived. And they'd watch the moon come up the left eye of God and the sun come up the right eye of God, and they went on, and they never fell apart. They used the strongest Mexican Indian saying there is, Mañana es otro milagro de Dios, tomorrow is another miracle of God. Y con el favor de Dios, and with the favor of God, we will go on and go on. And they never, ever fell apart with such disaster and hunger. My father, he grew up further down in Mexico, en los altos de Jalisco, donde la tierra está colorada, in Jalisco. Anybody here from Jalisco? Okay. People from Jalisco think they're hot stuff, like Texans, because that's where the mariachis come from and tequila. Anyway, my father was the 19th child, born to his mother when she was 50 years old. 14 of those kids lived. 3 years into the Mexican Revolution, there are only 3 kids left. They've been all slaughtered, raped, killed, massacred. There's only my father left, 10 years old. A red-headed, blue-eyed sister that has been raped so many times that she went blind. Another sister that has a baby, and her husband was killed. When my grandfather, the red-headed, blue-eyed Spaniard, Juan Jesus Villasenor, John Jesus Villasenor, saw this, he started screaming, "It's the end of the world. God has forsaken us." And he started drinking and died. But my grandmother, una chaparita peretita, a little short black one from Oaxaca, 4'10", she didn't say that. She said, Mañana es otro milagro de Dios, tomorrow's a miracle of God. Y con el favor de Dios, and with the favor of God, she said, I got 3 kids left to live for, and we will survive. And they came down from Los Altos de Jalisco, and they migrated to the Texas border, and it took them 2 years. And in those 2 years of migrating, my father said that he learned that the power of our species comes from the female. That any breeder fighting cocks or fighting bulls knows that when you finally find a good cock or a good bull, you ask, who was the female? Not who was the male. Because if you breed to dominant males within 3 generations, you end up with turkeys. You end up with big, stupid beef cattle that don't know how to dig for water anymore. You end up with chickens that won't protect their young. You end up with men that want to go play games over there all the time with other men, and they don't know how to work and take care of the family. But my father said, if you breed to a strong, tough, cunning female, generation after generation, you will have people that know como apoyar, how to support the family unit, and how to be tough and strong and never chicken out, no matter what the odds are. So my father told me the most important thing I could do as a man was to know how to choose the right woman to breed with. I mean to marry first and then breed. And all this my father told me before kindergarten. Then to further screw up my education, just before I started kindergarten, my father takes me aside and said, Mijo, you're going to be leaving the ranch now. So you got to know 2 things, how to wipe your nose and clean your own ass. And another thing is I want you to know that everybody loves Mexicans. I'll prove it to you. Look at the blacks and the whites. They come to the barrio. They eat some enchiladas. They drink some tequila, and they try to sing with the mariachis. That means everybody loves me. So I start school thinking everybody's going to love me. I'm Mexican. And then I start looking at which girl to breed with, you know. I'm 5 years old. And to marry first, I mean. And then I noticed nobody speaks English. I mean Spanish. They all speak English. And I said, oh, no, Mama, no me dejes. And she says, no, you got to go. I said, no, Mama, I don't want to go. I'm scared. And she says, teachers are wonderful. I love school. And down in Mexico, you're going to love school. It's okay. Don't be scared, this and that. And I start crying, and she takes me to the classroom. The teacher tries to grab me. I scream and try to bite the teacher. They put me in the back. In the back, they put me with all the black kids. and all the Mexican kids, which is we're about 25%, and all the Anglo kids are in front. And I start crying and crying, and the guy next to me, Ramon, he says, "Para de llorar, ya eres grande, stop crying, you're already big." And I said, "No, I'm not big, I want my mama." And he said, "Ten vergüenza, no seas tan llorón. You know, have some pride, don't be such a crybaby." "I don't have any pride, I want my mama." And then the teacher yells, no joke, she screams, "English only, no Spanish." And when she yells that, I get real scared. And I say, "Beep, beep, 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 beep." And I don't know if beep, beep, beep is Spanish or English, but I really got to go. And she yells, "No, not Teresa." Well, I understand no. And I try not to, but I can't help it. I'm scared. I start peeing. And you know, when you're scared, you can pee a lot. And I start peeing and peeing. And it's running down my right leg here, and it's running and running down. And pretty soon a puddle's forming by my foot. And the girl, I guess, next to me, this pretty Mexican girl, she can smell it or something because she looks over at me. Then she looks down and sees the puddle. And then she looks at me with disgust. And then I start crying, "No girl's ever going to want to marry me." And then at recess, I run out of there. I take off, I run to the bathroom, take off my pants, take off my underwear, throw them in the toilet, flush the toilet overflows. I run out of there trying to pull my pants on. I'm running across the playground, pulling on my pants, and I find the vatos, the Mexican guys, over there at the end of the playground. And I run up to them, and I guess technically, you know, we've already started a gang. And we go over there, and I said, "¿Qué vamos a hacer?" And Ramon said, "Yo no sé, aquí nos tratan como pendejos." Now, the word pendejos is a scientific word in Spanish. It means stupid, but it has a lot of science behind, a lot of technical feelings. It's a technical word. Anyway, and then the playground teacher comes over there and she starts yelling, "No Spanish, English only. You already told that." Well, I get scared and I go, "Beep, beep, beep, beep." And the other kids shut up. Ramon doesn't shut up. Ramon, he's brave. He looks right at her and he says, "No me estés gritando, no eres mi madre. Don't be yelling at me, you're not my mother." And she grabs him and starts shaking him, and he still doesn't get scared. He says, "Déjame ir, no tienes derecho. Let go of me, you don't have the right to grab me." Ramon wasn't just tough, he was so strong. And he was only in kindergarten, he's so strong. And then when he said that, she grabs him by the hair and starts slapping him and slapping him and slapping him. He still doesn't get scared. He yells right in her face, really good Spanish. He says, "Vieja, pin, 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 pin." And he cusses her out. And she slaps him and slaps him till he's bloody. Sends us to the classroom, takes him to the bathroom to clean him up. Who do you think, when my mother picked me up at the end of school, who do you think I didn't like or trust anymore? Who? Not teachers. Who? Who? My mom. I didn't trust my mom or like her anymore. She left me, and I asked her not to. And who did I think was a damn fool? Who? My father, because he told me everybody loved Mexicans. Within a week, I thought my beautiful mother was ugly. Within a week, I didn't listen to my father's stories from Mexico anymore because I thought he was a liar. Within a week, I began to look down my nose at us Mexicans thinking we were no good. Why? Because the playground teacher would sneak up on us and hit us. And if we were in the bathroom and we were speaking Spanish, she'd jump out of a stall and start hitting us and we'd pee all over ourselves. She'd tell us we were stupid, no good, unevolved. And that we weren't even, there was no purpose in us going to school because we didn't have the brains to learn anything. The blacks were smarter than us, that we were so stupid. And I began to believe her. Later on that year, or the next year, I don't remember which, a redheaded kid came to school with a lot of freckles. And he couldn't speak English at all. So we thought the teacher was going to grab him by his red hair and slap the freckles off his face. She didn't do that. She gave him compliments. So we did a huelga, we did a strike. We went over and we said, "Hey, how come you don't get mad at him? His English is way more worse than ours. Ours is much more better English." And we said, "He's a foreigner." She said, "He's not a foreigner. He's from Boston." Well, we couldn't understand Bostonian in San Diego County. Who here can speak Bostonian? Anybody? Who can say park the car? You're pretty good. Say it, park a car. One day his mother said he's going to park a car. Park a car. So he said, Mother, park a car. Park a car. So I thought his mother was a crow. Park a car. Park a car. His mother. So I'm looking up at the heavens thinking his mother's a crow. I don't see any crows. So I hit him. I liked him, so I hit him and knocked him down, and he hits me, and we're hitting each other, and we're having a lot of fun beating up each other. And the vatos come by and says, No te dejes, pégale, don't let him get you, beat him up. And he jumps back, and he says in Boston, he says, Are you Mexican? Am I what? Mexican. Am I Mexicano? Mexican. Mexican? I said, yeah. And this big, strong, red-headed kid screamed, his eyes full of tears, and he screamed, ah! He's full of terror suddenly, and he screams, You got a knife! I thought he said he had a knife. So I took off running, I'm running and running and running and running, and then I get way over there, and I realized when he said to turn around, he's running the opposite direction, he's running over there. And then I catch him over there, and I said, Howard, I don't got a knife. He said, Oh, yes, you do. I said, No, I don't. He said, My parents explained to me Mexicans always got knives. I said, Well, I didn't know that. I'll bring one tomorrow. So I brought two. I wanted to be a good Mexican. I brought a little rusty one that I couldn't open. Then I brought my father's castrating knife to castrate the pigs. And that one you don't want to open. It's so sharp. And anyway, later on I still want to be friends with Howard. So I invited him over to the house, to the ranch, to ride a horse or a bucking pig. Now, how many of you here have ever ridden a bucking pig? Raise your hands truthfully. Come on. Come on. Not one pig rider. Come on. It's normally the women. Who has ridden a bucking pig? Oh, one woman. Pigs are fun when you're a little kid. You jump on them, they buck. Oh, one guy. Okay. There are a lot of pig riders here that aren't admitting it. Anyway, so I invited him over to the ranch to ride a bucking pig or a horse, and he says, I can't come to your ranch with you. In fact, he said, I can't even be around you anymore. I said, why not? And he said, because my mother explained that Mexicans are bad people. And you know what came out of my mouth? I said, oh, I didn't know that. I'm sorry. That completed my American education. Why? Education isn't just learning science and math and history. It's learning who you are. And now I knew who I was. I was a no-good, stupid, unevolved Mexican. Shouldn't even be in school, and I was violent, and I carried a knife, and thusly I did, and I became a violent little kid. I flunked the 3rd grade twice because I couldn't learn to read. I was dyslexic. I still am. Still didn't learn to read until I was 20 years old, and school became such a nightmare that I became a bedwetter, and if there was going to be a test the next day, I would dream of falling down this orange tunnel, and it was like a well, and I'd come to the water. As soon as I touched the water, I'd wet my bed. And my mother finally bought a rubber sheet to cover the mattress because I'd ruined 3 mattresses. And it was my darkest secret. I didn't want my father and my brothers and sisters to know that I was a bedwetter because, you know, I'm in the 4th grade now. I'm in 3rd grade, flunking it twice. And school became worse and worse and worse and worse. Then, in the 7th grade, a teacher turned my whole life around. Teachers can save us. Teachers can do great things. Teachers can be wonderful. Who here has ever had a great teacher? Raise your hand. Who here has ever had a no good, rotten teacher? Raise your hand. Now, do you notice you raise your hands faster for the no good, rotten teacher? Now, I want you to raise it with more enthusiasm for the great teacher. How many of you here had a great teacher? Raise your hands. Good. Now, this 7th grade teacher was blonde and blue-eyed and very muscular. And he was not too tall. And he came from Colorado to Southern California, and he put a poster on the bulletin board of skiing in Colorado. And he said, my wife and I, we were ski bums in Colorado. That's why we were substitute teachers. And my wife had a scholarship to Boulder and track, and I still can't catch her in the 100 yards. And we've come to Southern California to become surf bums, and that's why we will continue being substitute teachers. And we're going to have 2.5 kids, and we're going to build a sailboat with our own 2 hands. And we're going to sail around the world. And he said, I just shared what I love to do And I want you to share with me what you love to do. And then this was an English class. And he said, I don't care about spelling or punctuation. All I care about is to get you so excited about reading and writing that you're going to learn everything in every field 100 times faster. We found out when we were teaching skiing in Colorado that you don't teach technique first because it interrupts a person's natural ability. You get them on the slopes and you get them going and you get them going and falling and trying. Then once they're going quite a while, then you teach technique, and that helps their natural ability instead of hindering it. He was talking about genius. He didn't say it, but he was talking about genius. He gave me wings. Suddenly, I wanted to please this teacher. I was free to write what I really wanted to write, to share with him what I really love to do. So I started writing about going home and hunting with my brother's dog, Shep, who was half coyote. And you know how dogs chase rabbits and squirrels and never get them? Well, this dog, this half coyote, didn't do that. This coyote would see the ground squirrels running over there for their holes, and he'd go like this, and some would get in their holes, and he'd run the opposite direction. So they'd look to see what he's doing. Then the others would come out of their holes and look, and he'd go down a gully and disappear, and they're looking over there, and he'd run all the way around, come in behind them, rush up at him. Some would get in the hole, some wouldn't. And he'd chase him up a tree or up a fence post. Then he'd get under the tree or under the fence post, and he'd make eye contact like this, looking at him like he's going to jump on him. And they're real nervous, real scared of him with his long tongue and big teeth. Then he'd walk around real slow, and they'd look down real slow. Then he'd suddenly change directions and go whoosh, 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 whoosh. And they'd go whoosh, 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 whoosh. Get dizzy, fall out of the tree, he'd grab them by the back of the head and break their neck. He taught me how to hunt squirrels, rabbits, ducks in shallow water. So I wrote this story and I put it down. The smartest human being I ever met, my brother's dog, Shep. I got an A. So I knew something was wrong with the teacher. So I took the teacher aside. I said, hey, Mr. Teacher, you know a lot about trying to catch your wife, and you know a lot about skiing and surfing, but you don't know much about teaching, sir, because, see, I'm a Mexican. So you're not supposed to give me an A. You're supposed to give me an F. I mean a D. You know, I cheated a little bit. Or a D plus. I mean, you could actually give me a C or a C plus because I've had a couple of C plus, but you can't give me an A. That's wrong, sir. And he said, I don't know what you're talking about. All I know is I agree with you. Your brother's dog's the smartest human being I ever met. For 3 days, I got A's. For 3 days, my whole life changed. He opened up a whole part of me that I didn't know of possibilities. He gave me compliments about being original, writing from the heart, all these things I didn't know anything about. I became a human child. I forgot I was a stupid, no good, uninvolved Mexican. I was just human. I was neutral. Then he left, and the real teacher came back. His name was Moses, but he wasn't going to take us to the promised land. He was a backward Moses. And the A students went over there, and they go, yeah, metiches, yeah, talking to him. And they're pointing at me, and he comes across the classroom so mad he's spitting. And he gets to me, and he hits me in the chest. Poke, 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 and it hurts. And he says, I don't know what you did to get away with that from where I was gone, but you're not going to get away with that. Give me back your papers. Then you know how there's some sexually frustrated teachers that use the big red markers? Well, this guy brought out his big red marker and took out his sexual frustration on my paper, and he went, yeah. And he gave me a D and a D. And then on my last paper, my name is Victor Edmundo Villasenor. He circled Edmundo, took off 2 points, changed my name Edmundo to Edmund, and said to everybody, and gave me an F, and said, he's so stupid he doesn't know how to spell his own name. And then he told me to sit down. I didn't sit down. Then he yelled at me. I said, sit down. I didn't sit down. And he stared at me. He said, can't you hear me? And I didn't answer him. And I want you to know, I never wet my bed again. I was never afraid of authority again. Why? I decided to kill him. I was 14 years old. I grew up on a ranch. I'd already shot beef that weighed 1,200 pounds, butchered them out, taken to the slaughterhouse, to the market. Shot pigs that weighed 400, 500, 600 pounds. I shot a deer with an old Winchester, Model 94, at 300 yards running with one shot, dropped him dead, which isn't it's a great shot with a slow-moving rifle. Not a great shot with a 270 or an .06, but I thought it was a great shot I did with one shot. So I was going to gut shoot this guy and let him suffer for a week, this teacher. When I decided to do this, a peace came over me, and it felt so good. Now, I don't know why, but sometimes when I tell this story to high school teachers, they seem to get a little nervous. And when I gave this talk to 300 hey, your girls are leaving on this one? Hold on. No, you don't. You've decided you want to go. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. So anyway, I was giving this talk to Virginia, the University of Virginia, and the professor came up afterwards. She was a tall, brunette woman. And she said, since he said this publicly, I want to add to this so you'll understand where he's coming from. She said, I was 5 years old when my stepfather started sexually molesting me. And he continued to molest me and rape me to the age of 15. At 15, I decided to kill him. When I figured out how to do it, he never touched me again. He knew I was different. He knew I was dangerous. He never touched me again. I ran away from home, lived with other relatives, and I graduated from high school. Now I'm a professor here at the University of Virginia. He said, so what he's talking about, he didn't say he killed him. He said he became free of him. What happened was when I refused to sit down or be intimidated by Moses, he knew something was wrong. I wasn't scared anymore. And he quit picking on me. So I didn't kill him. And when I give talks to high schools, I say, the name of the game is not to go around killing people. This person that killed all these kids, he's small potatoes. I would have killed a lot more people if I hadn't found my writing outlet. I want you to know there's a lot of hate in the world. This isn't just an accident. There are a lot of kids that feel that way. But we need to talk about it and stop saying that this is an isolated case. We need to. So when I give talks to high schools, I tell them that if they have hate and rage, write it out. Talk about it. Talk to their parents. If it's at home, the abuse going on, talk to a teacher. Get it out. Bring it out in the open. Help heal yourself. Don't continue being a victim. Anyhow, so I didn't kill Moses. And then I went to high school because I found the wrestling team. And I trimmed down from 160 pounds to 142. I could finally do sets of push-ups of 100 with both arms or 45 with either arm. I would run miles and miles and miles, about 5-minute miles, just to trim down. I made the varsity team my junior year and beat juniors and seniors 9 out of 12 matches. And I was just working out and getting all my hate and energy and anger out through wrestling. Then my junior year, a Spaniard named Olves from España said something under his breath, and the students said to him to repeat it. By the way, I got D's also in C's and F's in Spanish because I'm dyslexic. I can't read either language very well. And I can only read well in the mornings. By evening, I'm shot. So he said something, and they said, what did you say? And he said, no, you guys can't handle it. Americans can't handle truth or reality. They said, what is it? And he said, I said it's a good thing that the European people enslaved the blacks of Africa and eradicated most of the people of the Americas because indigenous people all over the world don't have the brains to help or do anything for society, so it's best just to get rid of them or enslave them. And when he said this, a lot of the kids started clapping. The European kids, of course. I leaped up to break his neck, and I rashed at him. And I was going to knock him down, hit his Adam's apple with my elbow and crush it. And I could do it in a second. I'm in great shape. And then I saw him run behind his desk with fear, so I didn't break his neck. I didn't kill him. I ran home, went to Johnson's Sporting Goods store, bought a .357 Magnum Smith & Wesson, an .06 Model 70 Winchester, started loading my own ammunition. I quit going to school, and I started just doing shooting with both hands, throwing knives so I could split a 2x6 from here to there, so I knew I could bury a knife through the biggest man's chest all the way through. And I just kept working out. and going crazy with all this rage and hate I had in me. My parents didn't know what to do with me. A relative came from Mexico, Marina, and said, Mándalo a Mexico, send him to Mexico, maybe that will help. They sent me to Mexico and my whole life changed. This is the third act. The first act was growing up in the barrio with my lenguaje, with my language, with my culture. The second one was getting my culture ripped out of me because of English only, which is a license to look down your noses at everybody else. That's why 3 languages in this country is absolutely necessary. So I went to Mexico, and what did I do? I saw women nursing their babies and singing to them. Sana, sana, colita de rana. Échate un pedito y sánate mañana. Get well, little tail of pollywog. Give a little fart, you'll be well tomorrow. And they were singing these songs, cucurucucu, and they were in Spanish, and my heart gladdened, and my stomach relaxed, and all the hate started relaxing in my gut. And then I met this older woman. I thought she was really old. She was 29. And she took me to hear a concert in the park and classical music. I didn't know classical music massages the brain and lessens the hate and anger in your body. And then she took me to hear jazz, and hear these black guys playing jazz, this blonde guy playing jazz, these Mexican guys playing jazz. And I walked up to the black guys afterwards, and I said, what part of the States are you from? You know what those black guys said? No hablamos inglés. We don't speak English. And what comes out of my mouth? I said, well, aren't you black? They said, no, I'm not black. I'm Cuban. And he's from Panama. I said, oh, I thought you were black. And then I go over to the blonde guy and I said, what part of the States are you from? He said, no hablo inglés. I don't speak English. I said, well, aren't you white? And he said, he got mad. He said, no, I'm not white. I'm Mexicano, puro Mexicano. And these are my brothers. These are mis hermanos. And we're jazzing together. I said, well, how the hell do you get so blonde? He said, well, I'm German ancestor, but I've been here 5 generations, so I'm a Latino. He said, what's wrong with you? And I backed up, and I realized he was right. Something was wrong with me. And I suddenly realized, guess what? I was racist. I had become racist. That I hated, I had become because I thought in racist terms. I had been put racism on me so much that I had become that which I thought I hated. And suddenly I realized, oh my God. Words are not reality. Words are labels put upon reality. They're like maps. You can get a map of California, of this county here, whatever, but it doesn't show you the beauty of the hills and the grass and the deer and the cows and the horses running in the vineyards. Words do not show you an individual. And yet, I was looking at the whole world with words. Jew, Christian, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, white, black. So I couldn't see anyone. Because all I saw was black, or all I saw was Republican, or all I saw was Jew. And I suddenly realized I see no one or nothing because I see the whole world with such a strong filter of words that I can't get past the words to see the miracle of what I'm looking at. How many of you can understand a little bit what was going on in my brain? Raise your hands. Raise them high. High, 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 high. Thank you. Anyway, the next day, I saw this woman in the park. She was an Indian. The day before, I would have thought, oh, a beggar, poor, dumb Indian woman. This day, I saw her there, and she was wearing rich colors like this, but really bright. This is an old purse, really bright. And she was from Oaxaca or Guatemala. And she was playing a flute. And she had these little kids with little caps on. And she was selling little wares. And she was rich. Her teeth were so beautiful, white. And she was rich with love and affection. And her kids loved her. And they're little. And she's nursing the other one. And oh my God. She was so beautiful, and I wouldn't have seen that the day before. Then I walked by this alley, and I would have just seen a bunch of poverty and trash. That's not what I saw this day. There were some kids running around, and they had sticks, and they were throwing empty cans and playing baseball with cans and sticks. And then there were these little puppies rolling in the trash, and they were laughing and joyful. And I saw that in the middle of poverty and filth, there was all this happiness and joy in life. And I said, oh my God, life and joy is everywhere. And I wasn't able to see it because I was so brainwashed. And then this woman said, you want to go on a tour? We're going to take a guided tour. And I said, sure. And we went to the Zócalo, downtown Mexico. Who's ever been there? Raise your hands. Oh, quite a few of you, about 8, 10 people. The Zócalo is this great wonder of the world. It's outside in Mexico City, and it's huge. And you see the colonial times, and you see the original indigenous times, and you see modern times, and you get to see it all in one space. And this guy told us that when Cortés came to downtown Mexico, to the Zócalo, he saw a richer trading of goods than all of Europe. Way richer, gold and silver and spices and tapestries and animals and all this. And then he told us that the potato, that the tomato, that chocolate, that corn, anyhow, there are 8 things that all come from Mexico and Central America. I thought the potato came from Ireland. No, it all came here and was taken all over the world. Chocolate is from here. And then he said that Mexico is still a very rich country, and there's no need for anybody from Mexico to come to work in the United States. The only problem is that 4% control the wealth and deliberately keep the people ignorant, uneducated, and crushed down with Catholicism. And suddenly I saw things differently. Then he took us out to the pyramids. And he told us that people say, oh, these pyramids are for human sacrifice. Well, then he said that'd be like going to Germany and saying, oh, the Germans, their whole culture is for exterminating Jews. No, the Germans, that's just one little piece of their history. Their history is huge and large. Well, so are the pyramids. The people that built them did not do human sacrifice. They built it for the sun and the moon and the star systems and the movement. And it was the Aztecs that were warriors that came later that did human sacrifice and didn't even know what was going on by the Toltecs. And then he told us that the Toltecs knew that the earth wiggles every 26,000 years and either speeds up or slows down. How many of you here know about the earth wiggle, that they now know that it's finally making headlines the last 6 years? One person. How many? 5, 6. Yeah, it wiggles. And they have watched it so many times that they know when it speeds up, that's male energy. When it slows down, that's female energy. And we're just finishing up 26,000 years of male energy. And in the year 2012, we're starting to go into female energy. And we're going to have a kinder planet for 26,000 years, whether you like it or not. And then he told us that the concept of zero was not known in Europe till the 16th century. Where did it come from? Africa. From the Moors, North Africa. And the concept of zero was known all over the Americas for thousands and thousands of years. And without the concept of zero, you can't go into higher math. And he told us that the Toltecs, the people from Oaxaca, the Incas, the Mayas, the Hopis, all these people knew that. So they knew that the earth wasn't flat. They knew that it was round. And they knew that we weren't the center of the universe. They knew we circled around the sun. And they knew all this thing about the calendar, about all these things. Suddenly I realized I'd been lied to. Not just by Moses and old Miss, that Spaniard, and the kindergarten teacher. I had been lied to by the books, by the libraries, by the people that wrote history, that manipulated, that said that the people of the Americas were ignorant savages. By the Christians that went around saying they had to save these savages. The priest used to accompany my great-grandfather, Leonardo Camargo, when they'd slaughter the Yaqui Indians. You know what they'd say? It's okay to kill their bodies because you're saving their immortal souls. And they would slaughter them. And a rage came up in me so big that I didn't know what to do. I started drinking for the first time. And I was running 5, 6, 10 miles a day, pouring with sweat. And I'm running at 6, 7, 10,000 feet altitude. And I can't stop running and screaming and raging. I'm so mad. And then this woman wants to introduce me to books. And I said, no, those are no good. They give you a headache. And then she said, well, this book has hardly any words in it. So she gave me a book called The Family of Man. Who's ever seen that book? It's a picture book. 1 person, 2 people. Get that book. It's very important. No, get my books first. Anyway. It's a picture book, and it shows a little white girl and a little black girl playing together. They don't know racism. It shows little kids born in Africa and Asia all over. And you know what? They're born beautiful, and they're full of life and energy and smiles. And then the little girls are trying to dress up and act like mama and be sexy, and the boys are trying to learn how to throw a spear and how to hunt and fish like daddy. And then it shows courtship and marriage and birthing of the next generation. And life goes on, and you start seeing, suddenly I realized, we're all one family. We're all one race, the human race. It's a lie that we're different races. We have different cultures. We're closer related than a jackass and a horse, because you breed a burro to a mare, and you get a mule, and a mule can't have babies. But you breed an African to an Asian, and what do you get? Tiger Woods. And Tiger Woods can have babies. There's hardly any difference between an Englishman and a native from the jungles of Peru, where my wife's from. There's hardly any difference. We're all the same people. And I suddenly realized that it's not just the blacks and the minorities have been lied to. It's the whites. It's everybody. It's languaging that has separated us and pitted us against each other, that they're different races, different this, different... It's all the same race, the human race. We're all one family. And I saw that so clearly, I started crying and crying and crying. And I asked this older woman, I said, have there ever been books that write in words that try to jazz us together, to bring us together as all one people all over the world? And she says, the Bible tries to do that. And I said, no, not really. The Jews are that chosen people. That's separation right there. Are there any books that try to bring us together? She said, well, Homer has 2 volumes, and he tried to do that, Universal Stories. And I said, is he a local writer? And she said, no, he's a Greek. He wrote a long time ago. So then she got the book, The Odyssey, for me. I started crying. I said, Eve, I don't know how to read. She didn't ridicule me. She said, I'll read it to you. So she started reading 5, 6, 8 pages at a time. And then I'd read behind her, and I'd still have to circle 40, 50, 60 words per page. But I didn't know what it meant. When we finished that book, I said to her, oh my God, a book is holy. The Word is sacred. A good book can take us out of our isolated existence. A good book can teach me how that guy over there feels, how those people over there feel. I feel closer to them than my own brother and sister. A good book can show me about those people over there, and I get to know them better than my own family. A book's education can unite us and bring us together with understanding religiously and politically. What went wrong? Why is education separating us and making more separation with religion until Christians are fighting Christians and Muslims? It's not enough to Muslims to fight Christians. There's just more separation on and on and on. What went wrong? And she said, I don't know. And about that time, my father and mother came to Mexico, and they said it was time for me to return to the United States. And I said, no, Papa and Mama, I'm staying in Mexico the rest of my life. Me voy a quedar aquí donde no me duele el estómago. I'm going to stay here where my stomach doesn't hurt. I am never going to return to the United States because my stomach was in pain. I would do 400 or 500 sit-ups a day just to lessen to align all the rage in my stomach. And I thought my father was going to say, stay in Mexico. I said, Papa, when I was in the United States and I was ashamed of being a Mexican, I could tolerate all the racism, all the problems. I go back, and now that I'm proud of being who I am, a Latino, a Mexicano, and I see some racism, some horrible things going on, I'm going to start killing people. I'm going to rip out their Adam's apple. I'm going to break their necks. I'm going to start butchering people. And I thought my father was going to say, stay in Mexico. Mi papá de los Altos de Jalisco did not say that. This is my father and mother. Mi papá said the scientific word. He said, mira pendejo. You got no rage. You're nothing but a little piece of chicken shit. My father was always very subtle. He said, I got the rage, pendejo. We were starving to death when we got to the border there of the United States after 2 years of war and starvation. And we crossed the border thinking we were going to be okay now. And a new war started of racism. In Douglas, Arizona, I stole $6 worth of copper ore from the Queen Mine Company to feed my family. And they put me in the penitentiary, and I'm 13 years old. They wouldn't do that to a little Anglo kid, but they did that to a Mexican kid to show example. And those monsters in prison, he said, tried to rape me. But I fought back so hard, he said, that they cut my stomach open. He ripped his shirt open and showed a scar from rib to rib, this big a scar across his stomach. And he said, and my intestines all came out and they left me for dead. He said, there aren't enough bullets for me to kill all the people I want to kill. There aren't enough bullets and hate for me to get even. He said, but what I did to get even was I got rich and I became a Republican. He said, any damn fool can go around killing. Any damn fools can go around shooting each other kids. That takes no guts. What takes guts is to have that rage, that hate, and then agree to do something worthwhile. And I said, but I don't know what to do worthwhile. Papa, I just got this rage and this hate, and I started crying. He said, that's called an adult. The day you admit you got rage and hate, and you don't know what to do, but you agree to do something worthwhile anyway, is the day you become an adult, you become part of society. There isn't a man, woman, and child that has been embarrassed or beaten up or some horrible thing. And the day they put that together and agree to do something worthwhile within society is the day you become an adult. So I came home with my father. We drove up through Mexico, through Texas, through Arizona. We went to Turkey Flats, the prison camp where he had been taken from the penitentiary. I'm walking around this camp there up in the high desert. It's all dirt, all deserted, nothing left. And I hit something, and it's metal. So then I get a stick and clean it off, and there's a handle, and I pull it up, and there's a cement hole there. And he says, that's the hole where the guards castrated that big German and put him in the hole. That's where they used to put us when we did something. Suddenly I realized every detail that my parents had ever told me about their stories of Mexico and coming north were true. I had become a doubting Thomas since my first day of kindergarten, when they butchered me and told me that everything in my were lies and stupid. By the time we got home, I was listening to my father's stories once again with an energy and a pride to want to know my father and mother's stories that I hadn't been listening to since 5 years old. And then my father took me to the country club, and he didn't play golf, he played cards. And I'm there, and they want to teach me golf, and I don't know if I want to play. And then in comes this golfer, a blonde guy with a skinny Adam's apple. And he's nasty to the black help. And I know the old black man. We know him in the family, his whole family. And I leap up, knock over my chair to go after him and break his neck for being abusive to the old man. And the man tells me, no, no, no. So then I don't break his neck. I go home and I get my .357 Magnum, strap it on, get it over and under, take off running up the railroad tracks from our ranch, and I'm running and running, jump a couple of coyotes, no, a couple of deer, shot them both, killed them, then shot a coyote, skinned them out, brought the skins back home, and I realized I'm crazy. I look at myself in the mirror, I'm covered with blood, my eyes are crazy. I know if I stay in town any longer, I'm going to go gut shoot the kindergarten teacher. I'm going to hunt down Moses and shoot him. So then I don't want to do that because I remember that I'm sent here to plant seeds for the garden, from our garden. Came across the stars. My grandmother told me. So I pack up a couple of 1,000 rounds of ammunition in the family pickup, and I take off from the ranch, and I drive from Southern California through Nevada, Las Vegas, Nevada, St. George, Utah, turn left, Salt Lake City. I end up in Wyoming, turn right in Wyoming, go across the plains, go through Idaho, turn right, come across the plains in Wyoming, and some antelope ran across the road. This is where my miracle happened, and this is the end of the story. The antelope ran across the road. I slam on the brakes, pull over to the side, strap on my .357 Magnum, get my date pack, my Model 70 Winchester .06, and take after him to kill him. And they're running like that. They see me coming, so I stop and I run the opposite direction. I run way down through a gully, then I run for miles and miles and miles around, and I come up behind them like the coyote dog used to taught me to do. And I belly up, and now they're in killing range. I'm not going to kill the closest antelope to me because then they'll run away from me. I'm going to kill one of the furthest ones away, so then they'll run at me thinking the killing's from over there. I'm going to kill all I can with the rifle, 1 shot per animal. Then I'm going to take out my handgun and start killing with either hand. And then I realized they're so beautiful. An antelope have a bone structure. It's 4 times smaller than a cow. but 8 times stronger. They're the fastest antelope on earth, faster than anything in Africa. They've been clocked at 65 miles an hour, same speed as a cheetah. So I don't kill them. They're beautiful. And I stand up and I realize that what I want to kill is all this hate that I've been carrying since kindergarten. That's what I want to kill. And then I realize I have all this love of my grandmother telling me I'm a walking star and I was sent here to plant the seeds. So I'm split with all this love and all this hate. So what do? I don't kill them. And I start back for my truck. I slide off a mesa and some white seashells come loose. And I said, what does that mean? That the ocean used to be here in Wyoming? And then I slide further down and some Indian pottery comes loose. And I said, what does that mean? That there used to be an Indian village with beachfront property in Wyoming? And then an explosion goes off in my brain, like when I realized that I was racist. And this explosion, I see the earth, the whole earth, I see it in one vision. And I see that the tribes have come and gone and we don't know anything about them. We don't know about who built those stone hedges in England. We don't know about those faces, carved big faces in Easter Island out of stone that they were taken from the rocky side to the non-rocky side of the island. We don't know about that big design in the plateau of Peru that you can see from outer space. It's nearly 100 miles big. How it was designed and how it was aligned with the stars. We don't know about all these things in the Philippines. These big rocks that were moved from the mainland. Great big bus-like rocks and put to retain soil up on the hillsides so that they could farm. Who did this? How did they do this? But we do know a lot about one tribe called the Jews. Because they have a book called the Bible that anchors them to creation. And the Jews have survived centuries and centuries of persecution, and they don't fall apart and end up in prison. Who ends up in prison are the blacks and the Latinos and the uneducated whites. Jews don't end up in prison because they have a book that anchors their subconscious, the back of their head, to God, that they are special, that they are God's children. And that's what and then suddenly I realized that, guess what? We're all the children of God. And I suddenly realized that God never chose the Jews. The Jews chose God when they took their oral story and put it into written form, because the book is sacred and the word is holy. So when you take your oral story and put it into written form, you solidify, you cement your people that they can read something and nobody can destroy them anymore because they have something here. And suddenly I realized that I had to become a writer and write the story of my grandmother, the Yaqui Indian, who said I was a walking star. I had to write her story of creation. I had to write my grandmother's story from Oaxaca. And I realized that it's not the Bible, it's a Bible. And that there are thousands of Bibles, and that we need to write all our different stories. That we're all indigenous people at one time. That we all have stories of creation. And we all are children of God. Not the Jews. All of us. And suddenly, with utter clarity, I saw this vision for a world, global story to start uniting all of humanity and healing all the wounds of thousands of years. But then I remember I don't know how to read. And I said, just wait, God. You brought me to this mountaintop, and I see with utter clarity this vision that you're giving me that's fantastic and wonderful, but I don't got the tools to do it. I said, something is wrong with you, God. Either you got a warped sense of humor or you're senile, because why do you bring me and give me this vision when you know I can't do it? And I'm really pissed off at you, God. Then I realized that God can do anything. So I said, okay, God, if you can do anything, then I'll tell you what. You help me become a great writer, as great as Homer or better. And I swear to you, I'll never give up and I'll never quit until I accomplish that. But you can't chicken out on me, God. You got to stick with me because I really need your help. So with that oath, with that conviction, I went home. And I wrote for 10 years. And I got 265 rejections. And I finally sold my first book, A la Brava, for $4,000. Took me 5 years to write it. And the title was changed to Macho. And it was compared to the best of John Steinbeck by the LA Times. And I said, that's a good start. And then I got pregnant. Well, we got married. And we got pregnant. She gained 40 pounds. I gained 20. And now it was time to start the big book. And it took me 16 years to write Rain of Gold. And it took me 5 years to write 13 sentences. And it took me off and on 41 years to write Burro Genius. And I can tell you that if any one of my books had existed when I started school, my whole life would be different. Why? There ain't no bad people nowhere, no how. All there is good people all over the earth. What keeps us apart is ignorance and stereotypes and propaganda, religiously and politically, all over the world. And the time has come for us to bypass all that. Go inside of ourselves, not outside. Go inside to the kingdom of God. Bring it out, and miracles can happen. And yes, we are powerful, and we can kick ass. And it's our own ass that I want us to kick, out of ignorance and complacency and laziness, and realize that this is a wonderful planet, and we can make a difference. And it's your turn to plant your seeds. And you can plant seeds of separation and ignorance and separation, or you can plant seeds of unity and love and understanding and wisdom. Thank you very much.